Hey, you Miller Beach bums, Aetna heads, and other region rats. It's Thursday, May 20th, 2021. Time for another episode of the Miller Beach Podcast. You better freaking listen or watch, or somebody from Aetna gonna kick your butt.
Our high school was 1 mile from the beach.
Sicilian Inn was where everyone hung out.
Hammond's hot dogs, the best in the world. High school class of 77 was definitely
my first rock concert was the Hammond Civic Center.
You can't be from Miller Beach if you don't know what the BAB is.
And now, broadcasting to Miller Beach and around the world. You're listening to the Miller Beach Podcast with Word Class of 77 grad Michael Joyner.
Okay, folks, today's show, as always, is going to be a doozy, as the title suggests. I'm going to share some stories from the 70s and 80s, mostly about Aetna's troublemakers, things that we did, things that happened to us, all kinds of stuff, which will include me, of course. I'm from Aetna, Miller Beach, Aetna, Ryan. So I'm going to talk about some stuff I did with my close friends and a few others. And now the original plan was to have my buddy Mike Gahardo as a call-in guest, but he wimped out. No, actually, he had to go out of town last minute. So I'm just going to have to share with you. I said, Mike, tell me those stories. I'll share them. But basically, we're going to talk about what we chatted about on our last conversation. I probably call Mike 2 or 3 times a week. We've been friends since, let me see, when I moved to Aetna, 1118 Fayette Street. He lived right behind me. I knew him then, but we really became friends when, in the early 80s, when I was the drummer for his band Fugitive. And we rock and rolled, boy, I'll tell you. That's going to be another episode for another time when we talk about music. But Mike and I have been tight. We've been like this for a long time. Just like this. We're not tight. We just have fingers that are really weird. No, that's a dumb joke. And Mike went to Iraq. This is how close we are. When I did my first starring role in a full-length feature film, The Grace Card, when it went to theaters. When we were filming, I was playing this racist cop that had to pull over a Mexican dude. Now, this Mexican character had a name, Gonzalez, Rodriguez, whatever. I said, hey, can I change that to Gahardo? He said, sure. So I changed it to Gahardo, and in the movie, I pull over Mr. Gahardo. I brought Mike and his family to the premiere, and they watched it. We had a good old time. That's how tight we are. So anyway, whenever me and Mike talk on the phone, 75% of our conversation is reminiscing about growing up in Aetna, Miller, Wirt, and 100% is us laughing so hard about the dumb stuff we did or experienced, we have to put down our phones half the time. Okay? And it's my hope that you will have that same experience, whether you're listening or watching. Okay? Now, before I get into the fun, gritty stuff, allow me to give some shout outs and share a little email, okay, and do a little commercial. Got to do that every show. Hold on, where we at? Okay. First of all, Dawn Swadley, my good friend from Aetna. And thank you, Dawn, for always giving. By the way, if you want to help our podcast, my podcast, michaeljoyner.com/podcast, all the Venmo, PayPal, this costs money. Time is money when you're self-employed. I hate pushing that, but I have to because a lot of time goes into this. Dawn, thank you so much for always giving. And she said something on the Miller Beach Podcast Facebook page last week. Because I'm always asking for suggestions, and it's a good one. So I'm going to read what she said. She said, "Ask if you went to Wirt and you grew up in the 70s and 80s, Miller Beach, Aetna. What would you tell your teenage self? If you can go back in time, what would you tell? If you can go back in time, what would you tell your teenage self?" That's a great question. How I wish I can go back and smack myself upside my head. I didn't have a dad to do that. And just me and my mom and my 2 stepsisters, and I got away with too much. I'm lucky I'm not dead, as you will see by one of the stories I'm about to tell you today. I'd smack myself upside my head and say, get it together, pal. Go to college, study, quit playing around, quit looking for a party, quit chasing the women, quit spending an hour and a half on your hair. All kinds of stuff. But I can't go back. But what would you tell yourself if you could? Some people would say, keep going, you're doing great. Good for you. So that's what Dawn said. Now, Wes Lewis wrote, because this is pertaining to the music of the 60s, 70s, 80s, which I was talking about in a couple of podcasts ago. And I asked people, tell me what certain songs meant to you. And the one that stood out was from Wes Lewis. He wrote, 2 songs always bring me back home. The first one is My Baby Does the Hanky Panky. I think it's called Hanky Panky, Wes. Either way, I remember it. Oh, man. I love that song, too. His first is a Hanky Panky. Summer of 1966. He was 12 years old. They lived on Well Street. We all know where Well Street is. He was at the beach every day. That song was played on the jukebox. Remember jukeboxes? It was played so many times that summer, so whenever he hears it now, he's back at Well Street Beach. I don't know about you, but that's the same with me. When I listen to almost always 70s and 80s, and all of it brings me back to my youth, and my youth was in Miller Beach, Aetna, okay? Here's another one. Every Christmas, when he hears this song, Feliz Navidad by Jose Feliciano, he's walking down 10th Avenue. That's right by my house where I used to live. The trees and everything covered with snow. Heading home on Wyoming Street. Oh, man. Anybody else relate? I do. As poor as I was, and sometimes we could hardly give each other a Christmas present. Excuse me. Oh, Christmas still means, I think Christmas means more to people who are poor than it does people who are rich. I don't know. I wasn't rich at that time or really ever, but I think it exemplifies hope. And there's nothing a little poor boy needs more than hope. I think that's why we have so great fond memories of Christmas, even though we were poor. I also want to give a shout out to Trooper George Klepper. Always promoting the podcast. Thank you, George. I appreciate that, brother. So that's pretty much it. If I missed you, I apologize. I'm not overlooking anybody. I appreciate every single person that writes in, and I have a lot of you who have written in, and you want to be on the show when I start doing call-ins again. Hang in there. I'm going to get to you, okay? Folks, I got to do another little commercial. I'm going to do a commercial every week because I need to make some moolah. Folks, today's show is once again sponsored by comedianbooker.com. as well as estherpictures.com. Now, Comedian Booker, as you know, if you've paid attention to my past podcasts, is the #1 comedian booking agency who I also happen to be repped by. Folks, if you own a nightclub or a casino, they can hook you up with a comedy night, or if you're having any type of event at all, a birthday party, corporate event, comedianbooker.com is the place to go. All of their acts, including myself, are professionals with at least 15 years of experience. We've been on Dry Bar, the late night talk shows, Comedy Central. Okay? So if you want a professional comedian, and there's a lot of hacks out there, watch their videos. I'm sorry, they suck. Don't get me started. Get a professional. We'll make you happy. We'll give you a night you'll never forget. Also, today's show is brought to you by estherpictures.com. My film company, my film production company. We can help write, produce, direct your commercial if you own a business, or even do a full-length feature film if you have an idea for a movie, or if you're looking for someone to write or rewrite screenplays. That's what I do for a living. Go to estherpictures.com for more information. estherpictures.com. And thank you all for giving. Go to michaeljoyner.com/podcast. Okay. If you want to help in any way, $10, $1, $20, $1,000, $1 million. Okay. And help any way you can so we can keep this thing going, man. I'm going to keep it going one way or the other. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't want to manipulate you, but help me out, bro. Help me out, folks. Okay. Hold on. Let me take another swig. This is called pop. If you grew up in the 70s and 80s, it's called pop. It's not a sody. It's freaking pop. Let me say this before I get started here. I've listened to a lot of podcasts getting prepared to do my own podcast. This one, I'm going to do 2 more, getting ready to open those up. I listened to a lot and I made notes of what bores me and what piqued my interest. And what bores me is when people read from a script like Robo Man, there's no personality or honesty, and there's definitely no surprises. The thing is, if you remember the podcast I did with me and Jeff Trathen, it was the first video podcast where the subject matter was Riverview Amusement Park, one of the biggest amusement parks in history from the 60s and early 70s in Chicago, Riverview Amusement Park. If you watch that, you know that me and Jeff talked for a little bit until Jeff confessed. He thought I was talking about Riverview Park and Lake Station, folks. Which actually made the show more interesting because we laughed. And then we ended up talking about that because we had a history from that. And so those are the things that don't happen if you have to stick with a script. So I got bullet points here. I got stuff written down. But for the most part, I want you to feel like you're sitting down, having a beer or a coffee with me. And we're talking and we're just sharing stories, okay? Because that's where I get this whole idea from. When me and my friends would sit down, me, Paul Orner, Frank Milanick, Tom Whitaker, whatever, we would sit down, Jeff Trathen, Mike Grijardo, we talk, and every time we're talking about Aetna Miller. And sometimes we're telling the same stories over and over again. The good news is we're getting so old we don't remember. So anyway, let's get started with this show, shall we? Folks, there's a saying, a phrase that we've used in America forever to describe kids who grew up in a certain area of neighborhoods in America. That phrase is the wrong side of the tracks. For the most part, parents on the right side of the tracks, the nicer neighborhoods, might say, you don't get to hang out with those kids from that area. Don't even think about dating someone from over there on the wrong side of the tracks, because that's where the troublemakers were from, the heads, the potheads, the druggies, the thugs, the hoods, the criminals, some of them, people with no money and poverty. Well, that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about today, because that's where I grew up, Aetna. Okay, I'm going to tell you what it was like to grow up in Aetna on the wrong side of the tracks. And what's ironic is that we literally were, as it pertains to Miller Beach, we were on the other side of the tracks. If you remember, you had the South Shore train that separated Miller Beach on 12 and 20, and on the other side, that's where Aetna began, okay? Families who, for the most part, had, sometimes one parent. They were dysfunctional. They were poor. We were sometimes in and out of jail. We did stupid stuff. But I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to tell you something today. The stuff we did, as crazy as it is, I'm going to share it with you. It's nothing compared to what people are doing today. Kids these days, man. I hate to sound like my grandpa again, but kids these days. Now, again, I got to tell you, I'm going to share some things, as I always do, maybe about smoking pot, sex, whatever. I don't do none of that stuff, nor do I wish I ever had. I have a lot of regrets. I wish I'd saved myself for my wife. I wish I'd never toked on a joint. I wish I never drank underage. And as a matter of fact, I don't drink anymore at all now. Nothing against folks who want a few. I just don't. A lot of things I'm going to share on this podcast and future podcasts that we did. I'm not in any way condoning it, but we look back now and say, oh God, how did we not die? And we laugh about it, okay? Please understand that. Because I'm going to tell stories today that will include funny stories, dangerous stories, and one, stay tuned towards the end, that almost got me killed. Okay. Now, growing up in the hood, Aetna hood, we pranked each other all the time, man. That's all we had. So we pranked each other, all right? And if you were unfortunate enough to crash one of our Aetna parties, you got pranked, usually to the extreme. Let me give you an example. I was at this party one time with 2 people I won't name, all right, because I didn't get their permission. two people I won't name, but they were my age. We were about, I don't know if we were 18, 19. Somebody was having a party in those woodland apartments. Is that what they were? Over there. There's always trouble at these apartments. It was off 20. I forget. See, this is what I mean by I don't prepare. Okay. Wood Lake Village or something like that. Whatever it was. Somebody had an apartment there. Parents were gone, or that person had an apartment. We were having a party. Somebody from Portage was dumb enough to crash the party. He thought maybe those Aetna punks aren't as bad as people say. Well, everything was going fine. We're all drinking. A few people over there toking, couple people making out, whatever. And I see two of the Aetna heads, who I know personally, grab the guy from Portage. They say, hey, man, let's get a picture. Somebody had a Polaroid camera at that time. Remember the Polaroids that you took the picture, it came out, and you waited about a minute, and it developed right there. Cost you about $8 a picture. So somebody said, hey, man, I got a new Polaroid camera. Let's take a picture. So one of the Aetna punks got on the left side of this guy from Portage. One of them got on his right side, and he's in the middle, the guy from Portage. And they're just holding him like he's their friend. And I guess the cameraman must have been in on it, because they said, okay, 1, 2, 3. And on 3, they both punch him in the face. And they took the picture. And now you got a picture of a guy. That's probably not funny to you. At the time, it wasn't that funny to me. I thought, am I next? But I don't know. That's who we were. And didn't hurt the dude that much, except for a punch in the face. And then he didn't stay. They said, hey, man, we're just messing with you. That's how we roll over here. And probably word got around. Don't go to any parties in Aetna. Here's a couple of Mike Grijardo stories that he shared with me. Again, I wish he was here to tell them, to share with you himself as a call-in guest, but he couldn't make it, so I'm going to share. Now, Mike Grijardo, again, we were friends when we were real little. I didn't know him that well, and then later on we got in a band together where he was the guitar player, I was the drummer, and his now brother-in-law, Ricky Yance, was the bass player. We're called Fugitive. Michael grew up right behind me in Aetna on a 10th place or something, 13th place, I think it was. He had a lot of brothers. Mexican dude, okay? Hillbillies, though. Whether you're Mexican, Puerto Rican, black, you lived in Aetna, you're a hillbilly. All right. A lot of brothers, okay? Manuel, and a sweet sister who had sense, but the brothers didn't. Arnold, who's my good friend. So, now I told you about my friend in a couple episodes before named Johnny Johnson. Johnny was kind of a peculiar guy, but he was our friend because he was just bigger than life, okay? However, because Johnny was a bit peculiar, he was the butt of a lot of pranks, okay? And because he always took it like a good sport. So one of the many pranks we did to Johnny, I wasn't there at this one, this is one Mike shared with me, is they were all at Pizza Hut one day, Johnny Johnson, Ricky Vegas, David Patridge, a couple of people, they all sat down at Pizza Hut on 12 and 20 with their order, okay? At that time, you paid for your order as you left. I think you know where this is going. So they order their pizza, a couple of pizzas, and one by one, oh man, I'm going to get in trouble for laughing at this. One by one, they start telling Johnny, I'm going to the bathroom. So there's 6 guys there with Johnny. One goes up, goes to the bathroom, doesn't come back. You think he would get it after 4, and I think he was starting to wonder, but he didn't want to ruffle any feathers, so he didn't say nothing. They weren't going to the bathroom. They were sneaking out the back door, laughing their butts off because they left Johnny with the bill. This poor guy. I don't know what happened. I know he did. Johnny was a good worker. He always had a job. I don't know if he had enough money to pay that whole bill. So I'm not sure what happened. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall, Back then, we didn't have the video cameras, or one guy would have stayed back and maybe taped it. It was a prank, folks. We pranked everybody. One of those guys that was at that thing, pranking Johnny, got pranked by Mike Gajardo. So Mike and his brother Fred are at the at the Miller McDonald's. Fred got his order, went back to his van. He's standing. Well, David happens to be wearing shorts. So Mike looks at his brother Fred and says, watch this. He walks behind David, pulls his shorts down. We did that to each other a lot. Pulls his shorts all the way down. Everybody's looking. Everybody's laughing. The manager of McDonald's is laughing. And David didn't have any underwear on. Okay? That's what made this one of the best ever. Mike didn't know that. So they're laughing even harder, so much that they almost died. Michael grabs his order, Mike Gajardo, and runs out the door because David's running after him, ready to kill him. Okay, that's just one of the many things. That's why you weren't allowed to hang out with people from our side of the tracks. That's probably a good thing now I think about it. Anyway, here's another story. Hold on. So Mike, like I said, had many brothers. Manuel, who passed away, a good drummer, excellent guy, family man, passed away about 10 years ago or so. So when Mike and Manuel were about, 13, 14, they were outside playing. We like to climb trees, okay? Us kids, like boys are, we like to climb trees. And Mike was climbing a tree in his yard. And he notices way up in the tree is a bottle of liquor tied to one of the branches that his brother Arnold put there because he knew no one would climb the tree. But Mike says he forgot about me. So Mike goes up there all the way up to the top, grabs this Mad Dog 2020, and him and Manuel drink the whole thing. As Mike says, they got tore up from the floor up. Arnold was pissed off, but he didn't know who to blame, and he couldn't say nothing, or he would have turned himself in. What else? Oh, yeah, there's so many stories. Remember the Lure hamburgers? I'm sure you do. That was over there in Aetna, right behind a place called J.R. Dallas, where I used to hang out when I was drinking a lot and going to see rock bands. But the Lure, best hamburgers in the world, man. And I think there was only two, one in Portage, one in Aetna. So the one in Aetna, everybody worked at. Everybody from Aetna at one time or another worked there. Mike worked there at one time, and he said one day he's working at the Lure restaurant with several friends from Aetna, making probably $2 an hour. Mike was the one making roast beefs and big lures. Big lures were these big old gigantic, better than Burger King or McDonald's in my opinion. 2 patties with cheese, right? So every time Mike's friends would walk in, he would hook them up. If they ordered a big lure, he put in 4, sometimes 5 patties and a big lure hamburger. Or if his friends would come in and order roast beef, instead of 1 ounce of beef, he would give them 5 to 6 ounces of beef instead of 1. And Mike says one of his friends said, "Man, you gave me so much I couldn't eat it." Mike says, no matter what, he always hooked a brother up. Okay, we did look out for each other. And that's what they get. They hired us from Aetna for $2 an hour. Now, that same place, at one time, I had a beautiful girl named Alex that I used to, we didn't really date. We'd hook up at parties and just make out, I guess. Let's be honest. Beautiful girl. I don't know what she saw in me, like almost every girl that I ever dated, but she liked me a lot, okay? I liked her a lot, but I was just too stupid to have a steady relationship. She worked at the Lure. Anytime I went in there, and I went in there a lot, I would order a regular hamburger and fries, and I would go home and I would have 3 big lures with cheese, 3 fries, a shake. God bless her. I don't know what happened to her. I'm not going to give her last name. I know who it is, but haven't heard from her in a long time. Interesting. So as I'm talking to Mike about these stories, as I'm writing them down and stuff, I said, "Mike, do you have any Steve Clark stories? Because I got a whole bunch." He said, "Oh, yeah." Now, Steve Clark lived right next door to Mike Gajardo on 10th place, I believe it was, 13th place. Behind me, I was on Fayette. I'm going to tell some more Steve Clark stories in a little bit because I ended up becoming very good friends with Steve and his family. We went everywhere together. I dated his sister. I'm going to save that for my end story because it's a doozy. It's a dangerous one, okay? But Steve was, we're all hillbillies, and Steve's family was no different. Talk about some hillbillies. We shopped at rummage sales for the finest clothes. His dad worked at the mill 12-hour shifts. When he wasn't working, he was on the CB radio. And when he wasn't doing that, he was sleeping, getting ready for the next shift. They would take us to Elks Lodge parties, all kinds of stuff. Well, whenever Steve's old man, we called him the old man. Even the wife said, "Where's the old man?" He would steal his car, starting at age 13, maybe even 12, I don't know. He had a big old Cadillac. Steve would lift his keys when the old man was sleeping and snoring, and we'd go for joyrides. I don't know how we're alive. Well, Mike says he remembers one time Steve Clark took his old man's car, the blue Cadillac, went to Thumbs Up. Thumbs Up was a bar. Still is a bar. It's called something else now, right there next to the Miller Pizza Company. Went to Thumbs Up where they never checked IDs. Even when we were 14, 15, they never checked IDs. So Mike and all his buddies are at Thumbs Up. Steve shows up at Thumbs Up with his old man's car. He's drinking. We're all drinking. And Steve all of a sudden disappears. They don't know where he's at. They go out in the alley and they see him in his dad's blue Cadillac with the car running. Steve had his foot on the pedal all the way down. The windows are rolled up. The doors are locked, so they couldn't get in. They ended up having to break the driver's side window to get him out of the car and shut the car off so he wouldn't die. And Steve was so drunk he couldn't even remember, but he had to tell his dad because the window was broke. I don't remember his dad ever hit. I don't know what happened. I'm sure he got in big trouble. And Mike said they were all cracking up. And it's just amazing that that place never checked your ID back in the 70s and 80s. And you know what? Somehow that was about the worst thing I could think that happened. The thing with Steve, okay? Hold on. Speaking of drinking at a young age, I was in my first band with Rick Chase. Rick Chase was one of my best buddies that I befriended. Really, Rick Chase was my first band. He was an excellent rockabilly guitar player, and we actually started a band called the Rockabillys, and his dad would get us booked everywhere, even in Michigan at some big, we'd travel a lot, at some whatever kind of Elks clubs or people getting married, you know, we would play and we get paid a little bit, but their family's from Walkerville, Michigan. Now, the first time I went to Walkerville, we walked into the one bar that they had. I think we were 15, 16, and we just grab a beer out of the case and drink it, and no one said anything about how old we were. We'd be in there drinking. Now, I remember his mom saying, "That's enough. That's enough." Now, she didn't want us drinking at all, but the dad, you know, knew he was keeping a good eye on us, and he did. We only had a couple. But here's another story. Oh, boy, they're coming. They're coming. Remember US 30 drag strip, where we would go to watch the drag strips, right? Well, I don't know what day it was closed or what season it was closed. It was summer. Me, Steve Clark, Frank Clark, and a couple other guys, might have been Mike Gajardo or one of his brothers, somehow ended up over there. Oh, that's right. We hitchhiked there because we were going to watch the races. Well, it was closed that day. We didn't know. We didn't have internet or nothing. We didn't think of calling ahead. We get there and it's closed. Nobody's there. Well, we climb the fence and we're walking around, you know, because we're going to get something out of this trip. And we go to this little shed that happened to be open. We open it up, and there must have been 500 bricks of firecrackers. Now, this was right before the 4th of July. We're walking. We don't have a car. But we each grabbed as many as we could. We didn't even have bags. And we carried those things all the way back to Aetna. I think we might have got on a bus one time. Somebody might have had enough money. Bricks of firecrackers. We stole from the shed at US 30. Brought them home. I would imagine after that somebody lost a finger or two because we were stupid. If you're listening and you remember who that was with me, let me know. So now on to my Steve Clark story that's hard to believe for some people, but it's absolutely true. When I first moved to 1118 Fayette Street, it was just me and my mom, my two sisters. My mom had recently got divorced. We were dirt poor, probably on food stamps. My mom eventually ended up working for the Gary food stamps all her life. She became one of their favorite workers. Dirt poor. I was only in 8th grade. Went to Kennedy King. I might have been in 7th grade. I somehow became friends with Steve Clark, who lived right behind me. Real good friends. If you ever knew Steve drowned in Lake Michigan so many years ago, but man, what a good guy. What a good guy. I would spend the night there in 8th grade to when I was a freshman. Probably literally, I'd call my mom 3 to 5 days a week. I'm spending the night at Steve's 3 to 5 days a week. Spend the night. And so that's how close I was to Steve. Now, Steve had a sister named Cindy, who was 16. And she was quite pretty. Okay? And by the way, that whole street was nothing but hillbillies. I could name some other families. I won't right now. But you know, if you grew up on that street, including Mike Graharo and his family, we were a bunch of hillbillies. We were some hard-working. Mike's dad, hardest working person I know. But we were hillbillies, man. So we lived like hillbillies. We would camp out in the backyard, and the way I met Steve's sister, she camped out with us one night. I didn't know she had her eye on me, and boy, she snagged me. She was my first real girlfriend, and how do I say this? She initiated me into the facts of life, and that was it. I was hooked. When that happens to a 14-year-old boy, you think you're in love, and maybe I was, and so did she. Here's the problem. She had a little boy. That's not the problem. The father was the leader of the Invaders Motorcycle Club, guy by the name of Mad Doctor. The Invaders were pretty much as big as the Hells Angels, okay? Where they drove around, you heard them. For the most part, they weren't causing trouble. However, I was stupid enough to date his girlfriend. She broke up with him to date me. And that dude didn't like that. And whenever he saw me, I didn't know this was going to happen. Whenever he saw me, he put on his brakes and he chased me. Here's the first time that happened. Me and Steve Clark's sister, Cindy, my girlfriend, and Mike's older brother, Arnold, and Cindy's sister, I forget her name, who Arnold was dating, are walking towards the beach, I believe on Lake Street, and it's night. It's probably about 7:30. Okay. We're just walking. I'm holding hands with Cindy. Arnold's holding hands with his girl, and we're just walking to the beach. We decided to walk to the beach, all the way from Aetna. Nice, cool night. Well, all of a sudden we hear motorcycles coming our way, and sure enough, it's Mad Doctor in the lead. He's got a girl on the back. But he don't care. He puts on the brakes as soon as he sees me and Cindy. And he skids and he gets off that bike ready with murder in his eyes. Cindy says, "Oh my God, Mike, it's Doc, run." I was already running when she said that. I ran into there was a big house off Lake Street. If you know that area, as you get towards the beach, there's not a lot of houses. There's a hill with a ravine and shrubbery and thorns and whatever. I ran. I don't even know if there was a alleyway there or a path. I just made a path. And then I got as far in as I could and then jumped into these weeds. I stayed there as I heard a commotion, people yelling, whatever, cussing at each other. Then I heard the motorcycle take off about 20, 25 minutes later. And I heard Cindy's voice going, Mike, Mike. I said, I'm right here. Before that, though, the guy in the house upstairs, the lights came on. I mean, up on the hill came on. He starts yelling, hey, who's out there? I'm thinking, shut up. You're going to give me away. I was sure I was dead. My 14-year-old heart is beating like crazy, man. I'm sure this guy's going to find me and kill me. Well, after Cindy called my name, I got out of there. She's kind of laughing at this point. And I find out what happened. And this is what happened. Now, Mike's brother Arnold is who's Mexican. Doesn't look at all like me. But Mike's brother Arnold was mistaken by Mad Doctor as the guy who was holding hands with Cindy. It confused him when he turned around and saw only him, because I was long gone. So he starts chasing Arnold. Now, Arnold is fast. He won ribbons in high school and stuff, okay? He's fast. So Arnold not only doesn't let him catch up to him, Arnold decides to mess with him. He runs a little bit, waits. He runs a little bit, waits for Doc to almost catch up, because Doc's an older guy. Then he runs some more, waits for him to catch up, runs some more. Finally, Doc's out of breath and he gives up. Yells at Cindy or whatever. He gets on his motorcycle and he's gone. That was the first time he chased me, which I didn't think was that funny. Another time, I remember, me, Cindy, and her mom are on our way to hit the rummage sales. That's where we bought our clothes, rummage sales. If you hear birds, I'm creating a new videotape room, and I'm not completely soundproof, so bear with me. It's daytime here. All right, so we're cutting through the park, this little park between Fayette Street and 10th Place, 13th Place. I keep saying 10th Place. It might have been. Will you shut up, you birds? So, quit your singing. They're making me lose my train of thought. So we're cutting through this park. And I happen to be holding Cindy's baby, which is Mad Doctor's baby. The baby's not even a year old, probably 5 months. I'm holding him in my arms. Cindy's next to me. Her mom's behind me. We're going to the rummage sales. Well, George Dooley, who was a real character, tough dude. I like George. He's also passed away. But George is just casually leaning up against the fence. He looks at me and says, hey, Mike, look behind you. And I looked behind me. It was like slow motion. There's Mad Doctor, fuming, and he's coming towards me, walking as fast as he can. He didn't want us to see him, so instead of running, he's walking. And he's literally only about 100 feet away. Cindy's mom says, oh my God, give me the baby and run. I gave her the baby. I start running. He's yelling and screaming and cussing me out. I don't know. He may have almost grabbed my hair. I don't know. I made it through some people's backyards. I made it through some fences, heard those people yelling, hey, get out of here, whatever. Once again, I eluded them. I don't know how that happened. I can go on and on. It happened many times. Now, I think he's over it because I became friends with Larry Reger, who was Ron Mundy's brother, and he talked to him on the phone all the time, and he would mention that I was there. But at the time, he wasn't over it, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him, man. This stupid little kid's dating your girlfriend, and he's holding your baby. So that's my Hells Angels Invaders story. Pretty crazy, isn't it? Now, before I always end with, I got a couple more stories, and I always end with a Jeff Trathen story if I can, and there's plenty. And I got a crazy Jeff Trathen story that fits the theme that we're talking about today. But before I do, I want to say something. We grew up in Aetna, wrong side of the tracks. One thing I learned in life, as someone who made a lot of stupid decisions, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Now, sure enough, us Aetna punks, we had some issues we had to work through when we were younger. We did all this stuff and more. There's some stories I can't tell you. Okay, nobody's dead or nothing, but they're just too much. Somebody could get maybe in trouble, or I don't want to mention people who now have families and so on. But we did stupid stuff. A lot of us ended up in jail, in prison. Some of us got physically hurt. Some people died. We did stupid stuff, but I'm on Facebook, like a lot of you now. I've been on there for years, since its beginnings. And with all due respect to all the folks who were raised right on Miller Beach, on the right side of the tracks, I see a lot of folks from Aetna now who were feared, shunned, or at the very least, something wrong with that boy, including myself. I see a lot of them now, and guess what? Their marriages are intact. They have good jobs, good businesses. They're providing for their families. They're not causing trouble. A lot of them, like myself, go to church, believe in the Lord. They're doing really good, man. They quit drinking. They quit the drugs. A lot of them, I would dare say almost most of them that I know, have gotten their lives together. It's not how you start, it's how you end. On the other side of the tracks, now I'm not wishing this on anybody, and I'm not saying nothing. I've seen a lot of folks who started out great. Their families gave them everything they wanted. They played sports. They went to college. They practiced good sense. And for whatever reason, I've seen some of them end up in prison. Alcoholics, their marriage is broken up. Friends, it's how you finish, okay? It's not how you start. Now, the good news is there's some who started good and ended good. That's the ultimate goal. If you can raise your children like that. And of course, we always have trials and stuff, tribulations in between. But for the most part, there's nothing there that's like really life damaging. So if you can start good and finish good, that's your goal. But if you started out like me, and even now when you're watching this, you're like, man, I'm messed up. Well, I got to be honest. If I can go back and look at myself, I wouldn't think I'd ever make it. I would have thrown myself out. Thank God people didn't give up on me. You can still get your life together, okay? It's how you finish, not how you start. Okay, that's today's sermon. Let me say one other thing. Back then, I'm talking about some crazy stuff we did, but you know what? By today's standards, we fought with our fists, for instance. These days, you offend somebody or whatever, you bump into them, they'll just take out the gun, do it sideways, and shoot you. That's a stone cold punk, okay? I see a lot of videos of people sucker punching people. We didn't do that. We fought with our fists. I remember being up in Walkerville, Michigan once with the band, Rockabillys. We were in a bar. A couple of guys were fighting about who makes the most money at their job. They said, let's take it outside. They did. They took it outside. They started fighting. One of them said, I give. And the other guy let him up, and they shook hands, and that was the end of that. Even back then, even in our fighting, in our stupidity, we had more integrity and discipline and respect for each other than they do now. Something wrong. Something wrong with the kids today. All right. Guess I feel like preaching too much. I'm going to end with two fun stories. First one is a friend of mine named Billy Rose. I wasn't sure it was Billy that I was with in this story, but it was, because I asked him, I said, Billy, was this me and you? And he said, sure enough. On Facebook, I got in touch with him. So Billy Rose was just like me, one of those lots of personality, but you didn't always want to hang out with him because he could say or do stuff that when we were younger might get you in a little bit of trouble, as an example. Me and Billy hardly ever hang out. Never. I think this is the only time I ever hung out with him, but I never forgot. We were in Valparaiso looking for a party, and somebody was driving the car. I'm not sure who. We had a few, and we were underage, probably about 18 or 19. Well, we get pulled over. And the driver says to me and Billy, just be quiet. Don't say anything stupid. I'll handle it. Rolls down the window. Good day, officer. The officer says, where are you going, boys? The driver says, oh, we're just going up the street to my friend's house. He said, what street? And Billy rose from the back seat, says, Sesame Street. I never forgot it because we thought we were all going to jail. The cop looks at him and says, get out of here. Oh, what a great story. All right. One last story about my buddy Jeff Trathen. Okay, so Jeff Trathen and I are not tough guys at all. We never bullied, and we never really got bullied. I'll tell you very quickly, the one time I got bullied by a person from Aetna who would bully me all the time, one day I just punched him in the face when he came up to try to bully me, and that was the end of it. That's how we dealt with it back then. He shook my hand and said, sorry, man. But Jeff and I were not fighters, like some of the stories I told you just now. We weren't punks. We were from Aetna, but we weren't your typical. We hung out with a lot of the jocks from Miller Beach, as a matter of fact. And we were pretty well liked by a lot of them. But that doesn't mean we always made the best decisions. For instance, one day, Jeff and I, right before he met his wife, Donna, were driving around in his car. And for some reason, we weren't in a great mood. Maybe because we couldn't get a beer. I don't know. We used to go to Little Mexico, little place in Lake Station, and buy a six-pack for $1. They never carded you. But I think they were closed. So we couldn't get a beer. So Jeff and I are driving down Central Avenue in Lake Station. And a couple of guys on some motorcycles, look to be about 25 or something, are getting on our butt for no reason. They're right up on Jeff's butt. And so Jeff slows down because he's not in a good mood. I'm like, what the hell are these guys doing? I'm like, Jeff, don't mess with them. So that pisses them off to where they come up to the side of the window, start challenging. I mean, they're right there. What the hell are you doing? Yelling at Jeff. After they, we were on one lane, then when we became 2 lanes, so Jeff is driving and just does one of these with the, doesn't in any way intend to knock them off the road or nothing, but does one of these with the wheel. The car jerks a little bit, freaks them out so much, they overcorrect themselves and run into each other, and both bikes, they fall on top of each other. Jeff looks back, I look back, he goes, man, we better get the hell out of here. Now we're in trouble. So Jeff speeds up while they're getting their bikes back up, right? We're looking in the rearview mirror. And at that time, on whatever that road was where Fat Daddy's used to be, I forget, 51, yeah. On 51, there was a rec room where people played pool and pinball and all kinds of stuff. So we sped up and parked in that parking lot and went inside till we thought it was safe. We're looking around because we're thinking, well, we're around a bunch of people. We should be safe here. So we don't see the guys or nothing. So we say, let's go. Must be safe. We go out to our car. As we walk out the door, the 2 motorcycles pull up. They got their eyes on both of us. They're looking right at us. I said to Jeff, well, I guess this is it. So we're getting ready to put up our dukes, even though we're not the best fighters in the world. I don't know. I've only been in a few fights, usually one punch. Him or me. So the guys walk toward us. I see Jeff kind of cock he's ready. That's one thing about Jeff, boy, when the going gets rough. So I'm ready too. The guy looks at Jeff. He says, "Did you see two guys come in here that were driving that car?" "Yeah, they're inside." They said, "Okay, thanks." They run inside. I swear. Me and Jeff look at each other and go, "Let's get the hell out of here." We left so fast. Now, I don't know if those guys saw us and changed their mind, or if they absolutely did not recognize us, if they were that stupid. But I think that was a God thing, because I don't know what would have happened. I may not be here to talk to you, because they were some tough motorcycle guys. Now, you may be thinking, Mike, what if those cats on them motorcycles happen to be listening, and for years they wondered who were those two punks that caused damage to their bikes? Let me just say this. Next time, make sure the guys you bozos try to run off the road ain't from Aetna.